Hi, if you're on here early, welcome. Thank you for getting on here. We're here to discuss some of the streamlining processes that we've had for instructor crossovers. And yeah, so I have some pretty good special guests on here today. I have Kirk, the founder of PFI, and Brian Shreve, who is our training manager. And I'm going to go ahead and bring them in right now. There we are. Welcome, Kirk. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Sean. Hey, Brian.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, guys.
So we'll give a couple of minutes. We are live on, I think they said 8 or 9 different streams right now. So we'll give some people some time to jump into this one before we get into the meat of our topic. So, Kirk, how are things going on the West Coast over there?
Yeah, it's a nice sunny day right now, which is a welcome change. Yeah, so we're doing good, doing lots of diving locally and doing some exploration. So just looking for the season to get in full swing with the waters warming up.
Excellent, excellent. And Brian, be careful, don't rub it in. How are things in Florida?
It's only partly sunny today, Sean. So instead of the fully sunny that we're normally enjoying, it's 69 and partly sunny. So we have some clouds today, and we've had a little bit of clouds and rain recently. But with the warm weather, you know, it's okay if we have a few clouds once in a while.
I think I saw a week or two ago you in the office with, you know, a woolen cap and gloves on at one point, weren't you?
Yeah, we actually had some near freezing, almost record low temperatures in South Florida, and I was up in Cave Country that weekend, and we had 20 degrees, and that's Fahrenheit, not Celsius, so -7 degree air temp. So it was really chilly up in North Florida that weekend.
Well, we have an exploration group. We've been going out and doing a lot of stuff locally that's utilizing free divers, recreational and technical, and the water's 5 Celsius. So, I mean, you know, yeah, the water coming out of your fridge is warmer than what we're swimming in at the moment. So, but they're braving it, which is good. Yeah,
well, the water where I live, the water where I live right now is hard. You have to drill to get through it. So.
Yeah, exactly. We did some of that in December too. Yeah, that was fun.
All right. Well, that's I don't know how many minutes it's been, only about 3 minutes, but let's go ahead and get started. I do want to make a couple of introductions here, more formal than just what I had already said, and that is we do have Kirk on here, who's the founder of PFI, and Kirk, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of background on how you got into it, your love of adventure and your travel, and of course, you and I were in the Cayman Islands at the same time, so
yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Well, you know, grew up a free diver, skin diver, snorkeler off the family sailboat, and got into aquatics, lifeguard, swim instructor, swim coach, all that sort of thing. Got into scuba, kind of left the skin diving because now you're blowing bubbles underwater and exploring and having fun that way. Recreational instructor in '88. By 92, I was nitrox instructor, moving into technical. Mid to late 90s, trimix in the Cayman Islands with dive tech, but free diving was always something I did. But I saw a need for formalized educational system. So by January of 2000, formed Performance Freediving International and moved my career into free diving and educational systems in that regard. And it's been great. You know, I love the adventure. Takes me around the world. I get to work with, 7 different special operations groups from 3 different countries, trained 7 athletes to 23 world records. And now for the last 4 years, been working and employing freediving and technical freediving with James Cameron on the Avatar sequel. So, but just getting back to the roots of freediving and just going out and having fun for whatever we're doing. And currently that exploration adventure is with this new group we've formed in British Columbia here, where we're using freedivers for a really critical aspect of exploration and survey diving. So it's quite unique. So I love it. Get to go around the world and have fun.
It is pretty fascinating. I mean, living in the Caribbean at that time and seeing, and it's kind of just human nature that we start off in snorkeling and then we want to go a little farther and a little farther and a little deeper and do a little bit more, and we just keep pushing it and pushing it. So I love that about people in exploration, and I'm really glad that you saw that need. And because we see it on the scuba side, we've seen it for a lot of years, that people want to do new things and they want to explore new stuff, but it does require some training in a lot of that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And Brian, you and I work together every day, but give everybody else a little bit of background, talk about your background, because you're probably more well known for your scuba and your rebreather stuff, but you have also, pun intended, dove really deep into the freediving world too.
Sure have, you bet. Yeah, I came into freediving through the scuba side, getting into scuba over 20 years ago, started teaching it, and we did some, breath hold freediving and whatnot, shallow depths, mostly the pool, some out at the local lake, but never anything really serious, and definitely not to, the level of, depths or safety, quite honestly, that we should have been doing. And so after PFI joined the international training family, I got interested in that again and decided to, we'll just take a freediver course, kind of see what's up, and was blown away by what I learned in that and kind of got hooked on that, and, enjoyed the challenge of not having big heavy doubles and deco bottles or a rebreather or a dry suit, or, it's just me and a mask and a snorkel and some fins and my own limitations, and seeing what I could do to push where I could take myself on a single breath.
There is something about that, the ease of all that, isn't there?
What's funny is now with this exploration we're doing, I'm starting to put tanks and everything back on. So here I am throwing side mount deco bottles and 60 meter in the cold dark to have fun on, some weeks, and then other weeks it's just back to the normal natural tank. So it's I love having all of those options of diving, right?
Yeah.
And it certainly is just more tools in the toolbox to explore the ocean and have fun however we can.
Well, I was going to say that. I was going to say, it's the right tools for the job. You need to, whatever the job requires, you use the right tools for it, and you get there and you have fun, hopefully fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes fun is right after the excitement, but
right. Yeah.
All right. So with that said, we've already established that Kirk, we're back to you. You've been doing this for a long time. What have you seen over the past, 2 decades? How have you seen this all sort of evolve and play out, and things change? You're obviously into now the next kind of cutting edge, if you will, of technical freediving and doing that.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, Sean, is 20 plus years ago, when I started the Canadian Association of Freediving and Apnea, our sport governing body for our national, we walked along the beach in Vancouver, and just said, "Excuse me, sir, can I ask you a question? Do you know what freediving is?" And people had no idea, right? You do that today, and 9 out of 10 people will quote you depths and times and people. And so it's become very much mainstream. 20 years ago, if I walked into a scuba shop and asked for freediving equipment, recommendations, or training, they would admonish you for even wanting to get into that sport. And now it's mainstream again. And where we had no support in training, or we're just starting it now, everyone's really into it. And so I think what's great is that the market has matured. Training agencies have recognized that where some of them were like sternly against it, now have embraced it. And it's just making access to freediving education, importantly what covers the safety aspect, more accessible. And I think that's important in the long run, and is what we're trying to do in part of this Facebook Live thing that we're doing now. And so to have 20 plus years ago developed really what were the first proper educational standards and procedures to formalize a complete thought out educational system, and to now see it evolve to where it is today with amazing athletes and just people having fun, and all of this access to freediving services is really heartening.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I share a little bit of that because I remember when I first started in the dive retail side, there was really the only thing we ever had for freediving was spear guns. I mean, that was
Right.
that was really it.
Yeah.
And then, as I moved through the industry and over the past 30 years, I've seen it used to be you'd get just, one little tiny space in a retail shop that had some freediving fins and maybe a snorkel or something like that.
Yeah.
And that retail space has increased in size as well. So I think in areas where the freediving is an option, including freshwater, like
Yeah.
Brian said, you've got a lot of freshwater freedivers that are out there too. It's really changed how we enjoy the sports. It's not just scuba, in scuba shops, it's scuba and freediving, and there's a lot to offer there.
Yeah, and something else, Sean, is I think if you look at the participation in freediving active numbers, it is bumping up, if not greater than technical diving, and bumping up on recreational diving. So it is this ease of entry into it. I mean, there's still education that needs to go on. There's still investments in equipment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes at the high end, those investments can be a little bit more significant, the right tool for the job that you're trying to do. But being able to get back into it in a little bit more streamlined, a little bit less investment, a little easier access is amazing. But I think what you're going to see too is freediving is going to be that thing that reinvigorates scuba as well. That you'll have this whole market of people who have never been scuba divers, they're free divers, but now they're like, I actually want to go spend time at that depth and not just pop down, see it for a second, then be on my way up. And that's what I'm really experiencing again, 20 years later, is I'm actually going to some of these depths that I was doing scuba back in the day, then free diving, now back on scuba, and like spending time looking at that stocked crinoid or that anemone or, whatever it is. So it's, I think it's healthy for the dive industry in general, the growth of free diving.
I would agree, and it's just a general appreciation for water. I mean, I look at that as a investment versus fun ratio, or an investment versus enjoyment ratio. If you have to put a little bit of time into it and you only get a little bit of an enjoyment out of it, then it's a good thing. People can throw all their free diving gear into their car after work and go out and do a few dives, enjoy the waters, and then come back. If they want to put a little bit more time into that, they can grab their dive gear, schedule a trip, go out on a boat, whatever it may be. It just requires a little bit more time.
And Brian will know this as well. Like when you become a free dive instructor, really your diving education has become complete at that point, from the physics, the physiology, because it's not about just partial pressures. It's about more Boyle's law, and it leads you into a more complete understanding of physiology, more complete understanding of dive physics, and then just all of those general skills. So really, if you're a technical focused instructor or a recreational focused scuba instructor, learning freediving and learning how to teach it really rounds out your full diving career. And it's cross training. It's like great cross training for you as an educator.
Yeah, I think it's really good for the mindset too. It's really good for the mindset, controlling the mind and making sure everything stays nice and calm. So we're going to take the heat off of you for just a second here, Kirk, and we're going to go over to Brian, and we're going to ask, why are we here? Why are we in this call today? And to discuss the changes we've made in crossover abilities for instructors, freediving instructors.
Sure. I'm pretty excited about why we're here today. We've had a lot of interest in PFI. We get a lot of inquiries from instructors with other agencies who teach freediving, but maybe aren't a member of the PFI family yet. And we have a really good reputation out there, and we've got a lot of interest in joining. And so over the last 2.5, 3 years, we've had the opportunity to evaluate instructors from several different agencies. And so today we're happy to say that we are now going to allow administrative crossovers from 4 different training agencies. There's still some other things that go along with that. But if you're a freedive instructor or an intermediate freedive instructor or equivalent from NAUI, SSI, Molchanov's, or FII, you are now eligible to cross over on an administrative process to PFI. So what that means is you don't have to go through an evaluation with an instructor trainer necessarily. So it really streamlines the process. Before this, we required that evaluation regardless of what agency they were coming from. But with the history of what we've seen, we've gotten to know the other programs, and we're comfortable that the quality of instructor and the safety of the instructors coming from those agencies is going to meet well with PFI's expectations and our standards.
Yeah, Kirk, and I'll get to you on this one, but I want to make it really clear, as somebody who's been in the training business for a long period of time, it takes time. It takes time to really review everything that comes in, not only the standards, but then the outcome or the output performance of the divers, of the instructors. And then with us, we want to make sure that we're communicating with the people in the field. So the existing PFI instructor trainers that are out there and saying, we're seeing these instructors, this is their feedback. So it took some time over the years. Talk about that, Kirk, because you have more years of seeing that than we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what people need to realize is when they hear administrative crossover, it's not just simply fill out a form, put it in, and 15 minutes later, pay my money and I'm done. I mean, I watch Brian go through and the paperwork of the administrative crossover. I mean, it's an application. He spends 2 days going into the background and researching and finding out who was their instructor and how did they get, and sometimes going to their instructor trainers to get verification. And so it is the quality control we have behind it is really impressive. And we're not looking just to get volume. We're trying to really qualify really good candidates and identify where the strengths and weaknesses are, where the deficiencies are, and what needs to be met to get up to level. And I think just talking with Brian and seeing the process happen over this past year and the hundreds of applications that have come in, we've been able to sift through and figure out where deficiencies lie in some components of training systems and where other ones, like Brian said, meet our expectations. And so I think that was really important. Obviously it'd be easier just to, hey, fill out this form. Importantly, give us your credit card and away we go. But that's not how we work. And that's what I really love about the international training system, is that quality control behind it. And then to see over the past 20 years, we've been the market leader or the industry leader in diving education, freediving education, and from the instructor component to it. And we put a lot of things in place that even from the scuba side of it were quite unique. Like we were the first to introduce capacity dives. It's one thing to be a great freediver, you're a world record freediver, but you can't articulate what you're trying to teach someone. It's one thing to be a great educator, but you have a lack of freediving, skill. And so we look for both, but then there's the capacity. Can you do the work involved in the education and the amount of dives and that sort of thing? So some of the things, we've done as well is really require the instructor to be there on each and every dive with the ability to intervene, correct, see problems, debrief them, and that sort of thing in a rotation of capacity of dives that happen. And so that's what I really love about, the system we've created is we've really strive to be top and really qualify our people. And we're not afraid to deny an application or recommend additional training that they have to see an IT or an instructor and that sort of thing. So it's very proud of the system that we've developed and we maintained.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think oftentimes having seen this for many years now that people sometimes mistake, I have this certification card with this agency, I should get the same card with your agency.
Right.
And there's a lot more to that. I mean,
there is.
Different agencies have different philosophies. They have different skills that they require, different performances that they want. So it's up to that individual agency to assess, is that the whole training component, is it equivalent? It's the end result is that card, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same as other
Yeah.
agencies. So you started to get on to my next question there, Kirk. So you
Okay.
you kind of stole some of my
Sorry.
some of my thunder.
Okay.
See, that's the passion, and
Yeah.
that goes right into my next question. What have you seen? Some of the highlights of PFI. What has PFI done over the years that you could speak to that is like the first?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, we standardized a complete system of education and the standards and procedures and things that went along with that. We standardized the idea of recovery breathing. We standardized the idea of what a buddy system means and actually put a name to it. That it's more than just off the same boat in the Pacific Ocean on the same day as you. We called it direct supervision. And so we really took a methodical approach to education, with safety being our biggest focus. And then we moved into, the instructor components and the aspects of that. So what I like now is, we have these high standards, and with international training, we've really got this modern e-learning platform, and we've got a global support system around the world for our instructors to access a world-class educational system where if anyone's ever got a question, and I always find, and I do this myself, I have a question about something we're doing, and I just go to that little bar in the bottom right-hand corner of the international training website, and there's that chat feature. And I mean, I've never been on that chat for more than like 10 seconds and someone was like coming at me with an answer, or I'm going to get back to you, and timely, like 15 minutes later, hey, Kirk, here's what we're looking for. So it's really that global support and the training system behind a great educational system with amazing world-class global support. But you still feel like you're in a family.
Yeah, excellent. So, and that was a great segue, by the way, because I'm going to switch back over to Shreve. And there's a competition for that chat. We have weekly competitions on there. Who can get it the fastest? And I lose every time. I simply, that may be by choice. But yeah, we also have 2 people who are on there that are extremely fast in getting those things and making sure the customers get taken care of in an efficient way. So a little bit of behind the scenes going on there. But so Brian, with that, because Kirk kind of gave you a nice segue into that, what do people coming in, our existing PFI instructors, as well as anybody who might be considering coming into international training or crossing over to PFI, what can they stand to gain out of that?
Well, I think for a lot of them, first thing they're going to notice is going to be the level of customer service. We've got a great team of people that are here at headquarters and at our regional offices around the world that will be supporting them. We have the e-learning platform, so we have e-learning courses available. We just launched a bunch of specialties that are available. We don't have e-learning for those, but we do have standards, and those are published online, so we have additional tools that they can use to offer continuing education to their customers. We also have really competitive pricing, and they're, easy way to make profit with add-on sales. We have apparel, that sort of thing. And so just comes right down to a solid agency experience for most of them. That's what we've heard, especially from several of our crossovers, is they just can't get over how much different it is working with international training. And I think that's one of our biggest advantages, is the great group of people we have helping our members.
We do. I agree. And it's an amazing team, and it's growing. We're always looking for new and passionate people to come into the team. It's interesting to me that, I guess you think of the old corporate world and you think of how many people it takes to get a job done. And we're a pretty streamlined team. We don't have that many people, but we work very efficiently in what we do to get things done. So agree with you. And for those of you on this Brian Shreve is he's the head of that whole team, the training and membership services team that actually answers your calls and answers to your emails and does those kind of things. There are, of course, other teams at our headquarters that support that and back it up to make sure that if things get too overwhelming, we can bring in some the backup teams to help with that. So, but Brian manages that team really well, and it's a very talented, passionate group.
You know, Sean, and just to jump in here, one thing is, you know, I'm on the intercompany chat groups, and here I see you guys working at headquarters and remotely, whatever you're doing, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And then I also see you guys planning going up to caving this weekend, or I'm putting together my new doubles because I'm going off to do a trimix on some wreck, or I'm going, you know, free diving in a spring, and that we're actually all active, passionate divers in all of the disciplines on a weekly basis. This just isn't, you know, we're not just sitting in our cubicles. We're divers first and we're cubicle people second, kind of thing, right? So and it is that family component to it that I just love seeing, you know, that stuff go on, and it just shows you we're passionate about it, and it shows when we interact with our customers.
Yep, there's a lot of banter and gift that goes on, gifts that get shared on that thing too.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to stick with you for a little bit there, Brian. And how does the crossover work? And then we'll get Kirk integrated into that as well. But how does the whole, if someone wants to cross over, what do they need to do, and who should they contact?
Sure, I'll be happy to go over that, Sean. The crossover process is pretty straightforward, especially on the administrative side, but every single individual, regardless of where they were crossing over from, would do a few things. We have some e-learning that we go through. There's a crossover e-learning course that gets them familiar with international training, all of the companies, the agencies under the umbrella of international training, history, philosophy, that sort of thing. We also have freediving instructors go through the freediver and intermediate freediver e-learning so that they can become familiar with the way things are presented in the PFI curriculum, with the platform, how it works, and so forth. They're going to see what their students will potentially be seeing, because e-learning is by far the most popular way to present the information for the home study portion. Once they've gotten through that e-learning, then they will meet with an instructor trainer or a company representative, and it can be done remotely for about a 2.5 hour or so session, where we go through a webinar or an in-person session where we basically teach them how to be an instructor under the PFI agency. They already know how to teach. We're not teaching them how to do that. Rather, we're teaching them how to operate within our system. So we go over the website, show them how to register students. Where do I go to access standards? How does the website work? You know, all of that sort of thing. And then we have the last section, which is everybody's favorite, which is the paperwork. And so with the paperwork, we have to document everything. And at that point, it gets sent into the training department, and then we review all of that information. If more information is needed, we'll reach out. As Kirk mentioned earlier, we may reach out to the candidate themselves. We may reach out to their trainer. We may reach out to people we know in the industry and try and get more information if we need that. And then we review all the information. If everything is good to go and they're from one of the agencies and meet all the criteria for administrative crossover, that's it. If not, if something shows up that's maybe needing to be looked into a little more, there's always the possibility of either some video being requested or even as much as a short evaluation by an IT in the field. And then if somebody's crossing over from one of the agencies that don't allow for administrative crossover to PFI, then all of that still applies, but the IT crossover evaluation becomes a mandatory component.
Right, exactly. And then just quickly, and then I'll go back to Kirk. Who should they contact if they're interested in doing this?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is contact training@tdisdi.com. Get a hold of the training department and we'll be happy to help you out. We also have a business development team. If you're familiar with one of our representatives out in the field with one of our regional offices, they can also assist you and get you started in that process.
Excellent. And Kirk, anything to highlight in what Brian just said as far as the process or things that you have seen that maybe he didn't cover? He's a busy person. He sees a lot of paperwork, and I will tell you, over the past 3 years, he has spent a lot of time reviewing videos. So
I know we've talked about it. Yeah, no, I think what people should know that it is a personal process. It's it's a one-on-one. You are dealing with a representative of the training department, but you have this connection with, for example, Brian, who's taking you through the process. Your best interest is in mind for him, be it there's deficiencies that need to be addressed, and we're not just going to say like, nope, denied, head off, but that where we see deficiencies, we want you to progress and work within the system and be the best that you can be. And so where we can address those deficiencies, be it get with a trainer, get with an instructor trainer, whatever it is. So I think, it's just not, there's an algorithm processing your credit card and your paperwork and welcome to the family, that your best and your students' best interests are in mind. And we're going to take the time personally, one-on-one with you to make sure that you are the best that you can be and help you address any of those deficiencies. So people should know it's just it is a bit of a process, but it's painless and it's friendly, and we want you to be part of the family.
Right, and we always the entire team always wants to give you a path forward to be successful. We
100%.
want you, if for whatever reason, whatever we have seen, which we will typically point out to you and say, this is the reason why we're adding these extra things in here, but this is how you can get past that and move forward. We always want to give you a path to success.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you think about it, it's in our best interest. If we have active instructors out in the field, that's what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that there's instructors training competent divers and free divers. So we always want people to come into our system. And then final question, and then we're going to get to any comments that may have come up, which I haven't seen many, except for somebody saying they're at +2 Celsius. So that's chilly.
Okay.
The last thing is about how long, Brian, about how long would a crossover take, the thing that you and Kirk just outlined there?
It really depends on the individual and on scheduling for the in-person or webinar session, but you're typically going to be looking at probably 4 or 5 hours to get through the e-learning. May need to spread that out over a few sessions. Typically looking at around another 2.5 or so to get through the in-person or webinar session. Paperwork, that's however long it takes you to gather up everything. And then it usually takes about a 1 to 2 day review process at headquarters before we can start approving ratings.
Yep.
And Kirk did joke about it, but the check or the credit card does have to clear before the ratings go live.
And just to be clear, 1 to 2 days does not include weekends. That's 1 to 2 days, Monday through
Business
Friday.
days,
Right,
correct.
yeah.
Correct.
So
Brian loves and wants you to be a member, but not that much, right?
Yeah, we'll put his home address on there so you can just drop off.
Yeah, just show up unannounced. Here I am.
All right. So let's see. Do we have any questions or comments that come in? ADA instructors. Well, let me tell you from this. One thing I didn't mention was that my background in the company is I primarily do our risk management. I help with that whole process. Certainly does not mean that I'm an attorney. It's just I work with our attorneys. So Theo, to answer your question, can we make changes for any of the ADA? And I hope I'm saying that correctly. We have taken the past 3 years to look at that. And as mentioned previously in this conversation, we have a safety standard that we want to get people to. And in our experience, the videos that we have reviewed, the crossovers that we have looked at, the instructor trainer evaluations, and this goes back to some of our the PFI instructor trainers that came over when they came into international training. Unfortunately, ADA right now does not meet that standard without an instructor trainer evaluation.
So there is the crossover process. It just requires the additional component in water.
Correct. Yes. Thank you for that addition, Kirk. That's if that wasn't clear, that does need to be clear. The option's there. It just requires an IT evaluation.
Yeah.
Yes. So to answer the question, administratively, not at this time, but the crossover is definitely available from that agency, just requiring the IT evaluation.
Yes. All right. I don't know if there's anything else. For those of you who have never been on the back end of one of these things, there's these little people who work in the background that work magic, and they add in little comments and things. So some of this we're operating in the blind. So are there any more questions or comments there, or anything you guys want to add?
Well, I mean, Brian, why don't you tell us about, just give us a quick idea for any scuba instructor that's watching this thing right now and is thinking they want to teach freediving. I mean,
Sure.
What would that,
That's a great
let's
one.
just touch it while we're waiting
Great
for
one.
comments to come in.
Yeah, you bet. That's a great question, Kirk, and one that I've got personal experience with, having gone through that myself. And we do get that question quite a bit. So with the scuba instructor, we already know how to teach diving. But whether we can become a freediver instructor or not will depend on a few things. And first, we have to look at our experience and certification as a freediver. And for us to be able to teach the freediver course, which is our, kind of our flagship bread and butter, 20-meter freediver course, is we have to be first an intermediate freediver. And so we have to hold that certification with PFI or the equivalent with another agency. And so we're basically looking for, experience and ability that shows you're able to do free dives yourself at the diver level beyond 20 meters. So beyond the maximum of the course itself. And then you would progress through the safety free diver, which is akin to the rescue diver of the freediving world, and then on to safety supervisor, or to the supervisor, sorry. So safety is freediver, supervisor is somewhat like the dive master. So with the supervisor, you can actually, lead trips out to go do diving, but you're not teaching anything. So you could work with people who are certified freedivers, as long as they're diving within the level of certification. You're just there to provide some surface supervision and things like that. Can also
help an instructor too.
Yeah, can also work in competitions, things like that. Once you're up to the supervisor level, you can skip the next level, which is the assistant instructor, because in someone's development as an instructor who starts out as a freediver with no scuba instruction background, they need to learn how to teach. As scuba instructors, we already know how to teach. We just haven't shown that we know how to teach freediving. So once we get through that supervisor level, then we're able to go on to the instructor exam itself. And usually that involves some co-teaching or auditing a class, and then you're working in and doing the things that you need to do to show that you're able to conduct yourself as an instructor. One of the things Kirk mentioned earlier, the capacity dives. And to expand on that a little bit, what he's referring to is, as an instructor in our programs, you have to drop with every student on every single dive. And if you have even just 4 students in the water, that can turn into a really long open water session if you're having to wait 4 or 5 minutes between drops because you got to catch your breath. So the capacity test requires you to brief a student, do a dive, respond to any problems the student might have during the dive, debrief that dive, recover yourself, brief the next student, and then at 2 minutes be dropping again, just like you would during a class. And you have to do that 4 times back to back, responding to any problems that might occur. And a lot of people don't realize, they come in thinking, oh yeah, I'm a free diver, I can get to 20 meters no problem. Yes, but have you done it back to back to back to back? And you have to talk in between. makes a big difference. So, that's just one of those reality checks. And in my own training, I saw several candidates wave a white flag at that point because they realized, even though I'm comfortable at that depth, even though I can teach all of the other stuff just fine, I'm not where I need to be as a free diver to have the capacity to actually teach the class. So they took a step back, got a little more training. I had no problem with the capacity dives. I had a problem with equalizing, and the very last day couldn't get down to depth to be able to do the stress test. So
Right.
I had to wait till I was in better health to do that. But as a longtime scuba instructor, I already knew not to dive with a head cold anyway. So
Right.
But
And this,
that's an incredible skill. I mean, just listening to that, that's a realistic scenario. That's what's going to happen when you're actually working with students. So it would be good it would be very prudent for an instructor trainer to see how you perform at that level. That's a great thing to do.
to put it into the reality, you have 4 students, you've got 2.5 hours in the water. You're going to be doing 50 free dives as the
Yeah.
instructor, minimum, right?
Yeah.
And every on a repetition that's happening, and you have to have the functionality of being able to see deficiencies during the descent, deficiencies at the bottom turn, deficiencies on the way up, and deficiencies in the surface recovery, and then be able to articulate those points as well as you're recovering at the same time, getting ready to go. And then your next student comes up and you have to remember, what were the deficiencies they had on that previous dive?
Yep.
Remember, this is what you need to work on. And it's tasking, and it's physically tasking, and it's physiologically and mentally tasking. And it really requires the best of an instructor to come out. And like Brian said, not just be a great free diver, being able to get to that depth. No, get to that depth easy, repetitively, safely, and where you're not doing yourself undue harm or putting your students into undue harm.
Right. Excellent. Well, we don't have any more questions from anybody who has come on here. So unless you guys have anything else to add?
No, I think we pretty much covered a lot of it. And yeah, that's a lot of fun, guys.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're both busy. Brian, I know that you are extremely busy. Kirk, you are trying to keep other people busy and form all the things that you're forming, which is making you busy also.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks.
you bet. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah. And then thank you all for everybody who came on here and took the time out of your busy day and listened to this. I hope you gained something from it. And if you have any questions, as we said earlier in the presentation, make sure you hit that live chat function on the website and ask away, or you can email at training@tdisdi.com. Thank you.